What happens when we begin to realize that the 200-year experiment we've called the American healthcare system has failed? Tune in to Awakened Wellness with Mylène Riobe, MD, and join the conversation about how to heal our broken system to reverse our current health crisis. The entire world is looking for answers, and the truth is hidden in plain sight. Learn how spirituality, ancient traditions, and cutting-edge science are merging to create a new paradigm of wellness. Every Tuesday at 11 a.m. and 11 p.m. with live shows on the first and third mornings when you can call in and ask the questions that matter most to you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Awakened Wellness with Mylène Riobe, MD. I'm your host, Dr. Mylène, and today we are going on an adventure into the hidden meanings of gut symptoms, what your bloating and heartburn are trying to tell you, and why you should listen. So this is just part 2 from my previous podcast called Gut Check. Of course, the gastrointestinal system is getting a lot of attention recently because of the latest scientific research that shows us just how important the gastrointestinal system actually is. We used to think it was just simple tubes that were digesting and absorbing food, and now we have come to the understanding scientifically that our ancient traditions had been trying to tell us for thousands of years. We've come to the scientific understanding that the gastrointestinal system is what is being described as the most complex ecosystem on planet Earth. And, of course, many ancient traditions, including traditional Chinese medicine, have told us this for 4,000 or plus years. So it's good to see modern science and ancient traditions coming together, helping to bring us all under the same umbrella, so to speak, to inch us closer and closer to wholeness and oneness, which is the purpose of being human after all. So today we're going to talk about some hidden meanings. What do these gut symptoms mean? What are they trying to tell you? And what can you do about them? So just a couple of facts just to start out. As the medical director of the Rio Bay Institute of Integrative Medicine here in Jupiter, Florida, I have been treating gastrointestinal symptoms from a holistic perspective for many years. I come from a conventional medical model background, having trained in obstetrics and gynecology, still retaining my board certification in that, while also getting board certified in the very exciting new field of integrative medicine, which is more natural and holistic. So I'm able to marry both sides of the spectrum and bring them together in a pretty magical and wonderful way. So I'm really blessed and honored to be able to do that with my clients, to guide them to better health and wholeness. And I'm particularly blessed to be here with you today on Dream Vision 7 Radio, sharing with you what I've learned. Just a reminder, we're live every first and third Tuesday morning at 11 a.m. with pre-recorded shows on the second and fourth Tuesday mornings at 11 right here on Dream Vision 7 Radio. During our live shows, and today is a live show, April 2nd, 2019, we encourage you to give us a call at area code 833-220-1200. That's area code 833-220-1200. So small intestine bacterial overgrowth is what I focused on in the Gut Check podcast a few weeks back, and it has been a focus of my practice now for several years. And as an integrative medical doctor and someone who is on a spiritual journey as well, I'm always looking for the root causes. So what is the root cause of small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or SIBO as it's called? And so for that we go to medical institutions, highly respected medical institutions such as Johns Hopkins University. They are one of the front runners in studying this particular infection, which is plaguing Americans and increasingly the world population. Johns Hopkins will state that SIBO, which is an overgrowth of bacteria in the small intestine, which leads to an infection there that causes all kinds of symptoms, most notably fatigue, nausea, bloating, abdominal pain, diarrhea, and constipation. It was mistakenly called irritable bowel syndrome for quite some time, and now we're beginning to understand that the vast majority of people who are labeled with irritable bowel syndrome actually have a small intestine bacterial overgrowth. And so, again, we begin to ask ourselves, well, what is causing this infection? You know, the body is supposed to be self-correcting. It's supposed to be keeping itself in balance. And the small intestine is a place where bacteria do not belong. And so why is this area becoming infected to the point where it's causing a lot of problems for people? And so according to Johns Hopkins, this particular infection can be caused by low stomach acid, decreased motility of the small intestine. In other words, it's not moving fast enough. It's not propelling the food along itself fast enough through its muscle contractions. The overuse of antibiotics is blamed for as a cause of SIBO. Prior surgeries. So if you've had previous surgery on the gastrointestinal tract, this can cause some scarring and damage to the muscles, which can lead to reduced motility. Narcotic medications are being blamed, and antispasmodic medications or muscle relaxants. So again, the small intestine is a muscular tube, and so if we relax muscles, we also relax the small intestine, and the food doesn't move along it, and so that gives bacteria time to settle in. Antacids are blamed due to, again, reducing stomach acidity. So this is a very comprehensive list that's proposed by Johns Hopkins University, who has been doing a lot of extensive research on small intestine bacterial overgrowth. For me, this list is not satisfactory. You know, they're all physical causes, and we know very clearly that physical causes are never the cause of anything except more physical effects. And so I began to think of, well, stress must be causing this. So I moved away from distinctly physical things onto perhaps some mental, emotional, spiritual things, if you will. And I began to blame small intestine bacterial overgrowth on stress, which seemed like a good idea because everything seems to be caused by stress. When I wrote my book, The Tao of Integrative Medicine, that was the conclusion I came to when I did all my research. Stress is the root of all evil. And stress has many different faces. Stress comes in many different shapes and sizes, seen and unseen, and can be a cause of many, many things. And then I began to ask myself, well, what is stress really? As I began to treat this infection holistically, you know, Johns Hopkins also gave us a good idea that antibiotics were not the best mode of treatment. Now, mind you, Johns Hopkins still uses antibiotics as their first line of treatment, so they did not change their protocols when they did this monumental study that showed that herbs were more effective than antibiotics for treating this infection. They continue to use antibiotics, I guess because they are a conventional institution, a conventional medical institution. They have not yet gone away from antibiotics. So they are using the thing that they blame for the thing to treat the thing, and that really doesn't make sense, but they're doing it anyway. So they're using antibiotics to treat this infection, and then they're blaming antibiotics as a cause of the infection, and they're wondering why people get this infection over and over again. But at least they did do the trial, and the trial did show that herbs were more effective. And so this is what I use in my practice. I use herbs. I use the herbs that they studied, and I use herbs that I determined on my own should work well for SIBO, based on what I know about SIBO. And I'm probably getting better results, but we're still seeing these recurrences. So either the herbs are not working or the SIBO comes back. So I thought to myself again, well, okay, what am I missing? What's not being addressed here? And again, we kept going back to stress. Stress is not being addressed. Stress is everywhere here in America and throughout the world, really, and it has been with us for a long time. It's just that it has a lot more faces today than it did before. So while we don't have saber-toothed tigers chasing after us and lions and tigers and bears, and we know that bad weather is coming so we can take shelter, we have fortified homes where we can hide from predators, and we've pretty much done away with our predators. Whether that's good or bad is debatable. So we're pretty high up on the food chain today, and yet we carry these chains of stress with us, just as though we still had the lions and tigers and bears and bad weather to worry about and didn't have all of the protections that we have. And so this is causing the body to believe that it's still under stress, whether it is or it isn't. And, of course, we have different stressors today. So we have our modern-day stressors of work-related stress, family-related stress, toxins in our atmosphere, politics, economics. The stressors are everywhere, and this is obviously eroding our health and leading to many different conditions. But the reason I want to focus on the small bowel, small intestine bacterial overgrowth today, is because it's a hub to so many other diseases that if we don't treat it successfully, people fall through the cracks and have other, perhaps more significant diseases than SIBO. And so SIBO is being blamed for a lot of things, and we talked about this in our previous podcast, Gut Check. SIBO is being blamed by Cleveland Clinic, at least in their study, for twice the risk of pulmonary embolus, which is a life-threatening blood clot that travels from the large veins of the legs up to the lungs and blocks your ability to breathe. SIBO is increasing the risk of this condition by 2 times. That's more than cancer increases the risk of this condition. So this is a pretty monumental risk factor. We're also seeing that SIBO doubles your risk of heart disease. It doubles your risk of diabetes, and it doubles your risk of kidney disorders. And this is based on Cleveland Clinic's study back in 2018, just this past year. And so SIBO is beginning to be linked to many, many, many conditions by our titans of medicine, if you will. Our holistic physicians have linked SIBO to many, many more diseases, such as cancer, Alzheimer's, dementia, autism, and much more. It's just a matter of looking. If we decide to look for the link, we will find it. So this leads us to traditional Chinese medicine, and what do they have to say about SIBO? Now, there's no condition in Chinese medicine that is called SIBO, but we have to look at this condition through the lens of Chinese medicine in order to comprehend it better. So what do we know about SIBO so far? We know that 70% of those who are referred to a gastroenterologist have a diagnosis of SIBO, whether they know it or not. And this, again, was conducted at Johns Hopkins University. 70% of the clients that were referred to their gastrointestinal clinic during this study had SIBO, and they were testing everyone for it. So they extrapolated this to suggest that probably 70% of all gastrointestinal clinics contain clients who have SIBO. Now the question is whether or not they're being tested for it, and so far in most gastrointestinal clinics they are not being tested. They are being labeled with irritable bowel syndrome and other conditions, so we're not really looking for this infection yet. But if we did, we would know that 70% of Americans probably have it. We know that 74% of Americans have significant gastrointestinal symptoms, so this study was also conducted. So a very large portion, somewhere between 6 to 7 out of every 10 Americans has this infection. So again, we look at the symptoms: fatigue, nausea, bloating, pain, diarrhea, and constipation. And what does Chinese medicine have to say about this? So fatigue is an important symptom because it leads us to the Chinese spleen, which is essentially the gastrointestinal system, although in Chinese medicine the spleen is much more comprehensive than just that. But the symptoms of fatigue and loose stools that we would see in patients leads us to spleen. And what is spleen? So spleen is an energy system in Chinese medicine. It's not really an organ, but an energy system. It has many, many significant functions. So the spleen is essentially known to make qi and blood. It raises our qi. And so when we eat our food, the clear qi, if you will, or the energy from that food goes up to the lungs and is mixed with air. We would understand this in our modern terminology to mean that it runs our metabolism, because that is how energy is made